but I don't see others on our committee yet. Cammie, do you
Chair
see?
Moss said that board member Straight was with him. Is that right, Chair?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Chair Moss said that board member Straight was in the room with him.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
No.
We're just getting Brent's computer set up, but we're both here.
Okay. I'm just gonna turn my volume's way low. That's why I can't hear. Okay. So that makes 3. That would be a quorum. I know that we are going to excuse committee member Bogus this morning. And then I'm sure Vice Chair Davis will be jumping on shortly. My clock says 7:58. Is that what you show?
I show you have about 1 minute.
Okay. We'll give her another minute and then see where we are. Just by a way of information before we get started, if there's anyone on here from
Chair, it looks like member Bogus just joined us as well.
Okay, great.
I have started the stream. You're good to go.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Finance. We're glad to have you here this morning to join us. We are starting a little bit earlier to accommodate some of the other committees as well, and we appreciate you carving an early morning hour for some of you out of your day for us. My name is Kristen Norton. I am the chair. I represent District 15, which is in southern Utah along the southern border of our state, along with 3 of the LEAs in central Utah, Paiute County, Garfield County, and Wayne County. I would like the other committee members, if they could introduce themselves that are with us today, if they would do so, starting with Chair Moss. And Chair Moss, if you would then pass it on to the next member that you would like to introduce.
We're just doing introductions, right?
Correct.
I'm sorry, my computer died when I was in the middle of trial. I'm using a loaner and my volume is terrible, so I'm having trouble hearing you. Remember, Straight's computer is giving him a reload command or something. So we're here but struggling. Jim Moss, District 12. I represent Orem to Heber Valley and out to Vernal. And I think member Straight's almost in.
Okay.
Just clarification, Chair Norton, is it Rule 801 that was pulled off the committee agenda?
That is correct.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that when we get there, but
Okay.
I didn't want somebody to
We
get
had
off.
another,
Yeah.
we had somebody who wanted to join that discussion, but I'm making sure they understand it's off.
Excellent. If member Bogus is on, maybe she could introduce herself while we're waiting for member Straight to complete his boot up.
Yes, ma'am, that's fine. My name is Christina Bogus. I represent Taylorsville, Kearns, West Jordan, and a small slice of West Valley City in District 8 here in the Greater Salt Lake Valley.
Thank you. How about Vice Chair Davis? Has she jumped in yet?
No, ma'am, I don't see her.
Member Straight does appear to be on now, though.
Okay, Member Straight.
Yeah, I'm here.
Good. Would you introduce
Welcome. Well, I represent District 3, which is southern Weaver County and northern Davis.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, we have some public comment this morning. First, we would like to hear from Lisa Clough, and then followed by Kara Baldry.
Good morning, and thank you for letting me join this morning. I am Lisa Clough with Artworks for Kids, and I wanted to just provide a little background information on the BTS Arts Amendment. I think, as most of you know, USBE staff and Artworks for Kids have been working over the last several months on researching and exploring a funding model that is sustainable for the BTS Arts program. We have been working with the LFA, members of Executive Appropriations, as well as PEA, and most recently, a good discussion with Senator Fillmore. And the draft language that you have in your packet represents what we believe is a good, sustainable, viable funding model for BTS going forward. So I wanted to extend my support and give you that little bit of background.
Wonderful. Thank you so
and-
much.
Yes, well, thank you very much.
We appreciate that. Okay,
Bless
and
you.
Kara Baldry.
Thank
Is she?
you. Yes. Sorry. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and grateful for this minute. So I appreciate all the work that you guys do day in, day out. And I am at school and our bell's going to ring here in a minute. So I apologize if there's an influx of children that pass my office. I am an instructional coach. So I've been a career educator and I'm also a constituent. And I reached out to Christina Bogus to help investigate and resolve a concern I have about children who go missing from our schools, especially when we unenroll them after they miss 10 consecutive days. So as a concerned educator, I've asked our school and district, I work in Granite School District, what the policy is to ensure that these children are safe if they simply just stop coming to school. What are those next steps and what is the state policy to ensure children are being protected? Currently, we do not know that these missing children are safe. So our data request is to drive policy solutions to ensure the safety of missing children when communication from parents has not occurred. What does the data say? And what are other states doing to resolve this issue? So what happens after 10 days? So thank you so much for considering this. I'm looking forward to some information. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And yeah, that's, again, showing that great care and concern for our students is so important. And we appreciate you expressing that with
Thank
us
you so
today.
much. Thanks.
All right. I guess we could go ahead and get started with the action portion of our agenda. I would like to turn a little bit of time over to Ben Rasmussen right now, who is our Director of Law and Professional Practices. Ben, we are pulling our 27801. Would you like to comment on that for just a second before we move on to action item 1.3?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My understanding is there's been some considerable discussion of the 25% contribution piece that was going to be included in that rule, and staff has decided to take a different approach that starts with with a legislative request in that case, which doesn't necessitate an immediate rule change. So staff is recommending that we push that out until we see what happens with the legislative session, and then we can revisit that rule based on the direction that we get there.
Thank you so much. So we will be working to solve that problem and come up with a solution that works for everyone. We're just going to approach it from a different pathway at this time. Okay, so we will now move down to agenda item 1.
Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just make a comment of that? That was an action item on this, and the actions may arise in full board meeting that might not be ready to be discussed right now, but there's a lot that have to do with this, and I'm going to find out if there's a financial piece that we do need to add today. And so I'm wondering if later in the agenda, if the one financial piece we do have to add today, we can bring back later in the agenda if it's needed.
At this point, let's just coordinate that through
Finance.
Deputy Superintendent
Yeah.
Jones and
I will.
Deborah Jacobson. But we're just going to proceed on through the agenda as it is currently.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
So,
Madam Chair.
yes, sir.
Yeah, so I think Deborah's out today, so I'll take it. So through you, Madam Chair, Board Member Davis, if you just want to connect with me, I'll help however you need me to, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, both of you. All right, so as I was stating, on to action item 1.3, which is R277490, the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Elementary Arts Learning Program. Director Rasmussen will tee this up for us, along with BTS Coordinator Laura Baevsky and Finance Director Sam Uri.
Thank you, Chair. So if it's okay, what I will do is I will walk the committee through the changes that have been proposed for this rule, and then we can turn it over to the committee for any questions you have for staff, if that's okay.
Please.
But there are basically two changes being proposed to the rule. The more significant change is in the funding allocation, and the committee can find that on lines 129 through 137. Basically, the funding allocation as this would be the one or the other type of situation where that you can see in the rule. So that's outlined on line 129 through 137. The other change is a more minor change, just on line 171, line 172. It deals with a deadline that the staff has asked us to change the rule to move that deadline for notifying LEAs of their funding awards, to move that up from June 1st to May 1st annually. So that's just a minor change, but the major point of discussion, I think, will be the funding formula that's been highlighted in the rule, and staff would be happy to answer any questions you have about the reasons for that.
Thank you. And did either of the other two want to make any comments about this, Ben?
I think Lori is prepared to give a little history of about the basis for the request, if the committee would like that, or if the committee wants to ask the questions, you're welcome to do that too.
So let's go ahead and hear from Lori, and then if we have questions, committee, that would be the time.
Thank you, JD Rasmussen. I'm Lori Baevsky. I'm your finance coordinator and BTS arts coordinator as well. And as Ben teed up, will be the recommended changes for the BTS arts board rule really is changing the notification at the end of the document from June 1st to May 1st. And that's really due to hiring purposes, so that we can get educators hired in a more timely fashion. And this is due to field response, really. And then at the line 129, really the changes are actually fairly minimal. The recommended changes are that we add a second salary allocation towards BTS arts educator salaries before we distribute the remaining funding towards supply and materials. And you can see on line 132, capping that allocation, so we would cap the first allocation at 75% of the educator salary and benefits. And that's to create some buy-in for all LEAs, which is what we continue to hear from the legislature, that all programs should have some form of buy-in. And what we saw this year with the current uniform amount is a lot of the salaries were quite low, and now we have a really nice nest egg to return back to our LEAs for supplies and materials. And we would like respectfully to put that more towards salary allocations for those districts that have a higher cost burden before distributing the remainder towards supplies and materials. And I think that might be it. I'll stand for questions.
Okay, I can see a question from Committee Member Bogus.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. Sorry, I know my voice is a little whatever this morning. So this may be for Director Bajewski. It's also could be maybe for Superintendent Jones. In line 171 and 172, I understand why you're moving that forward. I'm wondering if it needs to be moved forward more, or if districts can adequately plan with this date, because most teachers are hired in May, March, sometimes February, but March, April, and sometimes May. But I think the general overall movement is to get them hired early so that people can plan for the next year. Student loads are counted. And so my question is, if we're here and we're changing this date, should it be moved earlier, or can districts adequately do their jobs with this date planning for the next academic fiscal?
Madam
Thank
Chair?
you, Board
Yes,
Member.
Deputy Superintendent.
So to answer Board Member Bogus's question, you can, she and everyone can see that there was the original June date in there, and we moved it to May, or we're proposing to move it to May for the very reason she's talking about. Part of the challenge is, as we know, the legislative sessions don't typically end until March. So Board Member Bogus is spot on. The hiring window too, but we were also giving ourselves enough time so that we could communicate what the results, if any, are from the legislative session and the timing of that. If if Lori wants to, further clarify that, but we were in June, so we tried to move it back for the very reasons that Board Member Box is talking about. But it would likely be impossible to do it earlier than May. If it pleases Board Member Bogus and the committee, I would recommend that we go with the May 1st just to see how that goes for 1 year. And then if not, we can come back and try to move it earlier. Does that answer or satisfy Board Member Bogus's question, Madam Chair?
Board Member Bogus?
Just one quick follow-up, Chair. My question would be, as a follow-up to that, can they adequately plan without this notice?
Yeah. So
I believe they can. I really do believe they can. The May 1st date is just really to, because they'll have data on what the estimates will be. We'll just make sure we keep final numbers, by May 1st. So that's the intent here.
So I really appreciate that. I appreciate Director Bajewski, and that's my only question on this rule, ma'am. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Lori, did you want to add on to that?
I did. The current board rule stipulates April 15th as notification back to the LEAs for the year, and we can change that. So to Deputy Jones's comments, we chose that April 15th date because of Deputy Jones's explanation. So, and I think rewinding the tape, I think Sam Uri, we could invite him into this conversation if we wanted, if we think we can get notification back to the LEAs prior to April 15th, so that's when we're notified. I'm sorry. April 15th is when we have to come up with the new uniform amount for the following year. Thank you, Deputy Jones. Deputy Jones is doing this. Yes, thank you. My correction. And so if we think we can come up with the uniform amount in advance of April 15th, then we can move that May 1st deadline. So I just wanted to add that.
Well, and it sounds like,
Madam Chair, if I may.
yes, go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah. Deputy Jones, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, Lori's right. The May 1st date you're seeing here is because we were saying, well, April 15th. That's why I'm asking, maybe we could just give this 1 year to try to see if the LEAs push, not push back, but if they come back and they say, hey, May 1st is just still too far out, then we can push maybe for April 1st on what Lori just described, right? And then move this date to April 15th later. So it's just we're trying to, basically herd the funding caps, right? To make sure that we can get everything in line and give everyone enough time to do it. But I do understand Board Member Boggess's concern about the hiring bill. So
Okay, so that would be fundamental. Well, we're going to try to get it as soon as they can, but we have deadlines that we want to give them good information when it does go out. This is where we
yeah,
sit.
yeah. If I could just call your attention to the wording, we purposely said no later than.
Yeah.
We actually can do it sooner, right? I mean, we just basically said that the farthest point is May 1st. We as staff, if everything falls into place, we come out of the session to do that. Believe me, we'll do it before May 1st. But that's a no later than May 1st. So we will work diligently to try to maximize providing the information during the hiring bill as much as possible. So I hope that helps. Thank you.
Great. Chair Moss.
Thank you. Question on a separate spot. The 75%, I'm curious, and I'm glad there's been discussions on the Hill. Does this, and I'm curious if you've had input from Senator Fillmore or others, does this help to address at all the intent of spreading the funding among more teachers? The fact that we have the lower of the uniform amount or 75%, would that be any part of addressing that desire from the legislature, or does it come out of other kind of information you're getting from the Hill? How does this tie into kind of where they've been trying to go?
So really, it's
I think you're muted, Lori, or is it
He's
me?
on now.
Oh,
I just turned the volume off on.
thank you, Chair Moss.
Oh,
Primarily,
I don't have.
it was.
So
I think
I
it's
gotta turn mine on. Hold 1 second here.
I didn't want you to get that back.
Lori, I'm sorry. Brent and I are in the same room. We've been toggling whose volume, so it was me that it was both of us. Would you mind saying that again? Sorry, Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Moss, for bringing up these issues. I think this was determined for dual purpose. So primarily to create buy-in for all of the districts, so that there are some districts who are paying zero literally right now, like zero for the program. And secondarily, it's to your point where by kind of capping at that 75% of the actual salary plus benefits, we are able to actually support more schools. I'm looking at our waiting list right now, and I think originally there were, I don't know, 24 on the waiting list. There are now 43 on the waiting list. So I think we would have an opportunity to not only hit more schools with more resources, but we can also apply select resources. There's also language in the board rule around artists in residence and different ways, because we removed the supplant language in the statute last year. We now have more flexibility with how we can spend the funding in our schools to reach more rural and underserved areas.
Thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Davis.
I think that most of my questions have been answered, but I do just, I guess, want to point out that there has been some matching previously, so this wouldn't be a new concept. And if, those legislators that are tasked with trying to figure out the big financial picture have understood this, then that's fine. Where do we need to add somewhere in here about the ESA? Because that was part of what a concern was expressed, I thought, by Senator Fillmore. And I don't want to speak for anybody, but do we need to add any language into this about that?
Thank you, Board Member Davis. And maybe I can invite Ben to speak more eloquently than me. I'm not very good at all this. In the board rule in line 10, it says section 53F-2506. It's actually linked to the statute. And if you click on that link, code in section 4D, it speaks directly to the educator salary adjustment. And I don't know, Ben, if we need to add it more explicitly to the code or not. So I'm going to toss the ball to you.
No, my feeling was that where it's referenced in the rule, the statute, that we should be good.
Okay, thank you. I wonder if we need to just make sure we communicate that well with LEAs, because I'm not sure why, he would bring that up if it wasn't something that was an area of concern, but maybe we just need to emphasize it.
Yeah, or Ben, can we add it? I don't know if there's a way to say it again, or I guess
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
I think we'll just communicate, what Member Rasmussen said. If the committee's okay with that, I feel okay with it.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, Cami, could you please put the motion up? And if there's someone who would like to make that motion?
I'll do it.
Great. Thank you, Member Straight.
I move that the committee approves R277-490 Beverly Taylor Sorensen Elementary Arts Learning Program, Draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Okay, would you like to speak to that motion? Member Straight?
Just big time and support. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you. All right, is there anyone else that has any questions or comments they'd like to add?
Ma'am, Deputy Superintendent Jones, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Just for clarity, on line 135, where the funds are to be proportionally distributed, not specific LEAs, Lori, are we good there, or? I don't think that, I know the motion's been made and stuff, but I think that the LEAs need clarity on that part. Yeah.
Could you provide a little bit more information?
Yeah, we just informed the group what that means, what line 135 means. So if we have additional balances left over, what does that mean? What does that imply?
That they will be, yes, that they will be, yes, the remaining funds to all LEAs unfunded will be distributed proportionally. So
right.
My understanding is of that we will look at the remaining funds that are outstanding. So the LEAs will look at what's the remainder of what they owe, right? To pay for their BTS arts educators, and that will be distributed proportionally. So if an LEA owes $2 and an LEA owes $10, then it would be weighted proportionally towards the remainder. Do we need more clarifying language there?
Well, so let me just clarify for the good of the group and for the public in now too with you. You're right. The way the funding formula is, it's likely that some LEAs will receive more money than others. Some will receive less. If there's leftover balances, then to Lori's point, we'll just have to look at it that time and then redistribute proportionately to those that didn't get enough money, from their viewpoint to fund their costs, right? So we will try to we will true up, if you will, that thing to make sure that we're doing that. So, Madam Chair, can we check in with Sam and see if what I just said is accurate or not?
Yes, Sam, go
Or
ahead. I
correct.
see your hand.
Yes, Sam Uri, School Finance Director. It may be helpful for us to display this base plus model and how it works visually. Basically, under the current uniform amount, and I apologize, it's not in backup. I can share my screen, but basically with the current uniform amount that the legislature set, there's about 20 LEAs that are not required to give a match in order to compensate their arts educator. It just depends on how they are individually compensating that educator, or where they are on the salary schedule, or their LEA wide salary schedule. With this proposal, that would take every LEA now participating in BTS would be matching at least at some level. The lowest match would be about 12%. And on the higher end, those LEAs that are matching more with the current uniform amount, you have a couple of charter schools, but Wasatch School District, George Washington, Duchesne, Tooele, Salt Lake City, Park City, Alpine, kind of on that higher end, their matches would still be higher than that 12%. The highest match on this proposed model would be 26%, down from 48%. So it kind of moves this whole funding from kind of those 20 LEAs that aren't matching currently. They would kind of require a little bit less match from these on the higher end. And I do want to let the board members and public know that there is maybe some concern from possibly some legislators or the Legislative Fiscal Analyst Office that if if we are to go this route, it maybe could be construed as not honoring that legislative intent of it being a uniform amount. And I'm not trying to sway you one way or another in that direction. I'm just letting you know that's some feedback that we have heard. And so, for example, we heard if some of these districts, for example, Park City, are receiving more money under this new model, which they would, there could be some legislators that are not quite as happy with this change. Again, I don't want to sway the board in any way, shape, or form with that information, but just wanted to pass that along, that is some feedback that we've heard, because it does change that uniform amount. So.
So, Madam Chair, if I may. So, Sam, how would new schools get funded then under this model, right? Like schools that are, entering into the program and all that. Do we account for them in this distribution model? Yes or no, and how? Or why not?
Yeah, it would just be, Lori can correct me if I'm wrong here, but, it would just be based on salary verifications again. So you would have to have that information, and then just everybody that's approved, you would take that lesser amount of, and then with that, so the matches, include that redistribution. And so again, it'd probably be to where no matter where you are, you're matching at some level. If you're on the very low end of compensation, you're around 10 or 12% that you're matching. If you're on the high end of compensation, you're around 20, 25%. With most in the middle are around 15% with this model. So does that help
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I think that does help clarify some of the concerns out there that were brought to us about how this model would support new schools, the redistribution as explained by Sam. All in all, I think we're just going to have to give ourselves, a year to see how this goes and then, make adjustments accordingly. If we even to bring it back to you, the board. So thank you, ma'am. That's all.
And I realize there has been a lot of discussion over the last few years on the Hill about this program and changes made but I think in the end, we're all trying to keep a great program, a generous contribution from the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Foundation, and bring arts into the lives of children. And, if that means that we have to keep tweaking it, then I think it's important that we do whatever we can do to achieve our end result. So that, in the mode of commenting on this motion that is before us, I'm grateful for the Beverly Taylor Sorensen program, and I am grateful for our legislature, and I know that they are all, everyone is trying to work to make this the best possible program. And as Deputy Superintendent just said, let's go forth, and I'm paraphrasing, and then adjust as we need to do. So thank you. Chair Moss, I see your hand.
Yeah, just one quick follow-up on that last item. It's okay, I'll just, is there any concern that with the lesser of element, 75%, that we are departing, this goes to Sam's question, we are departing from legislative intent on uniformity in a way that might bring us before admin rules? Is the potential concern that high? Is there anything we ought to think about there, or are we feeling like this kind of carries out? Because I understand in the match and potentially spreading it to other schools, that seems very consistent with legislative intent. How acute is that potential for somebody to say, nah, this is, outside of that uniformity?
And did you say you were addressing that to Sam?
I don't have it in mind. No.
Chair, were you addressing that to Sam?
I think so, yes. Thanks. Anybody who's kind of aware of legislative or potential legislative concern.
Scott or Sam?
From my standpoint, I don't think necessarily there's as much risk from being called up to admin rules. Potentially, the legislative fiscal analyst has looked at the language of this rule and does feel like it's, legally within the board's purview to make as part of that uniform amount. I think the risk is more politically that potentially there are legislators that could say, this is a little bit different than what we were anticipating. We just kind of wanted a flat uniform amount, and where this one's a little bit more variable, and it kind of goes back to the not all the way, but back more towards something like an 80-20 match. I think there could be legislators who kind of are a little bit confused with why we're going a little bit different direction than maybe they thought. I would say that the risk is less on maybe the admin rules side and more on political side with certain legislators. Again, I don't know that I don't know if there's even one single legislator that could have a problem with this, but it's a concern that was brought up to us by the legislative fiscal analyst. And so just wanted to pass along that context. Certainly we all want this program to succeed.
Yeah, quick follow-up, Chair.
Best it can, but
Do we know how Chair Fillmore at PEA sees this? I think his name was thrown out. He's obviously an important part of that discussion. And I'll just say I haven't talked to him about this particular item, but we know where his take is on this.
Director Baevsky has spoken to Senator Fillmore. Perhaps she can speak to that conversation. Chair.
Correction. So I didn't speak. I didn't speak to Senator Fillmore. My understanding. So our partners, Artworks for Kids, had a conversation with Senator Fillmore yesterday. I think Lisa Clough mentioned that in her opening remarks, and the concern was around the ESA and wanting the ESA language in the board rule, which it stands.
And that language is not in the board rule currently?
Earlier when we discussed it, it is listed in code right at the very beginning. It's referred to.
There's a reference to the code.
Yeah.
I apologize. I missed that. Okay. All right. And sorry, Chair, I'm getting informal. Can I just make a comment?
You bet.
You know, I don't mind going up to admin rules. It won't be me. It'll be somebody else. I just want to maybe be able to explain that we're consistent with code. And you know, if you're called up for that, as long as you can say, look, this follows the legislative direction, then we're in good shape. And sometimes it's an opportunity to clarify. But not having been in the weeds on this one, I would just want to make sure that we're not in a position that we've ignored some of the pretty direct legislative statements. And there seems to be a way to work through those and apply that in a way that also accomplishes that intent of getting some buy-in. But again, I'm not in the weeds, so I hope we've sort of anticipated all those potential concerns and we don't end up in, you know, kind of getting pushed back because we departed from it. So thank you for that response.
Okay, just as a reminder to y'all, we do have a motion on the floor, so make sure your comments are directed to that motion. And Vice Chair Davis, I see your hand.
Thank you. I'd like to speak to the motion. I think we could move this today, but I think we also can direct staff to work on this in the interim before full board meeting and just double check that our understanding is correct, that the folks in PEA feel comfortable moving forward with this, and also ask if they want an explicit line called out to really explicitly remind about ESA in addition to a code reference. We could add that in also when it comes to full board, but I think for today we should probably move forward.
All right, seeing no other hands, the motion before the board is that the committee approves R277-490 Beverly Taylor Sorensen Elementary Arts Learning Program, BTS Arts, Draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Committee members, if you'll please vote. And that is unanimous. All right, our next item on the
Chair?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you. I have those motions ready for 801 if we can do those.
Have you already talked?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
He will let me know when it's time when we're ready to do that.
Okay. Scott, Deputy Jones.
Yes.
Okay.
Agenda item 1.4, action item R277-927, Teacher and Student Success Act, TSSA program. This is an amendment. And again, Director Rasmussen.
Thank you.
With Sarah Webke and Sam Uri.
Thank you, Chair. If I can I'll walk the committee through the changes that are proposed here, and then we can answer questions that you have. There's a few changes throughout the rule here, and one that was added last night, so I want to be sure to emphasize that. But first change is on line 26, just adding an oversight category. One correction I should make to the quad chart that you received that kind of explains the reason for the oversight category. I think I put in that quad chart that teaching and learning staff sometimes provides assistance to LEAs. That should have said student support services. But basically the gist of that is this is being, the recommendation is category 2 because we don't have any staff that are assigned to specifically monitor this program. We have staff in various departments that will answer questions when those questions arise. So that's why category 2. The next recommended change is on lines 129 through 36. Feedback from the field was that I think that there was questions as to whether student technology devices were an appropriate use of TSSA funds. Staff wants to amend the rule to clarify that they are an appropriate use. And so the language there on line 36 makes clear that student technology devices are not a capital expenditure that would be excluded from TSA expenditures. There's a change on line 37 and 38 that you'll see highlighted in blue that talks about early childhood education, including preschool programs. This change was passed by the board in 2019, but for some reason, the amendment got lost in translation to the rule, never got sent to the Office of Administrative Rules, and so never got added to the rule. Chief of Staff Sarah Young noticed this oversight just yesterday as she was reviewing the proposed rule changes and worked with Karen in identifying that this had actually been something that had already been proposed like 5 years ago. So the proposal would be that the committee add back in that language that should have been added before, just to clarify that early childhood education should include preschool programs. That was always supposed to be the intent of this rule, but like I say, for some reason got lost in translation there. The final change that is being proposed to the rule, you will find down here on lines 107 through 116. This deals with determining the state average teacher salary for TSSA. There was kind of a long, convoluted explanation, or a more complicated explanation that involved how that was calculated. Staff recommends that we simplify that and just say that we're going to use the calculation that's included in the superintendent's annual report. I don't think that's going to change the calculation drastically, but it just kind of simplifies for the field where they can see where that will be found. So those are the recommended changes to the rule. Happy to answer questions that the committee may have on the reason for those changes.
I see a question from Chair Moss.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question, for future reference, people looking at this, they might wonder what is used in the superintendent's report. It seems a little bit kind of uncertain. I assume it's not much different from the kind of more elaborate explanation, but I wonder if you could just remind us what that is, and if it might be good to reference, at least in conclusory fashion, how that number in the superintendent's report is determined, so people have, some certainty there.
Director Uri, do you have any feedback on that?
I apologize. Can we repeat the question? I had some audio trouble there.
Yeah, you bet, Chair, if that's okay.
Of course.
Yeah, just when we've laid out the formula that's used to determine the average teacher salary, and it's kind of simplified to just refer to the superintendent's annual report of annual teacher salary. And I assume that's basically the same formula that the comfort and certainty of folks looking at this. What is that? Is there any wiggle room or play between different ways of determining that? Will there be questions about, well, how is this one, calculated where we used to know the formula? And as a follow-up to that, would it make sense to at least have some conclusory reference to how that, average salary in the superintendent's report is determined?
Yeah, Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir.
So, average teacher salary is actually still something I feel like we could improve on. However, because the best data we have is LEA provided data, that is where the superintendent's report is generated from, is from LEA reported Cactus data. That's generated by our teaching and learning folks that maintain the Cactus database and provide that average teacher salary data. So it really is just an average of what the LEA reports as each individual teacher's salary for that year. I don't know if it would necessarily require any additions to the rule, but the methodology is pretty similar and unchanged each year. It really is just how the LEAs report each individual teacher's salary. Does that answer
Thank you. And
Chair question?
yeah, I don't know if it would be helpful to say as determined from LEA reported teacher salaries in Cactus. Are there, I've lost track of whether there are other alternate ways that might be calculated and whether it might provide some, kind of certainty to folks to say where that report gets that.
I actually think that in the code, in the Teacher and Student Success Act code, there are references to that average salary being needing to come from LEA reported data. So I think between the code and between this reference to the superintendent's annual report, I will tell you in practice, this is the report that LEAs have been using anyway. This old methodology that's in the rule really just only made sense that first year. So in practice, this is what LEAs have been using to determine whether they qualify for that 25 or 45% base salary supplement. So.
Okay, thank you. I want to avoid disputes or uncertainty about how we're doing it. And if you feel like that's well enough understood, then I don't want to propose an amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Davis.
Thank you. Is there an opportunity for LEAs to include, for example, would ESA be included? I mean, this is saying base salary, but how does that work on what they're reporting in Cactus? And also, some of our LEAs are on what's called a productivity model. And so they have base, plus if they work an extra eighth in a secondary school or work extra time in an elementary school, an eighth is added to the salary. So would they only get the percentage based on would they get it based on their total salary? Can LEAs enter that, or can they only enter base in the Cactus?
They
She says base.
Right. They should be entering the educators, even if it includes some productivity, they shouldn't necessarily be entering extra duty stipends and things of that nature, but anything that for that year that the teacher's being regularly paid should be reported in Cactus, if that makes sense.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
All right, seeing no other questions, do we want to put the recommended action up there and have someone make that motion?
I can make it.
Go ahead, thank you.
I move that the committee approves R 277-927 Teacher and Student Success Act TSSA Program Draft 2 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Would you like to speak to that?
Nope, I think we have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Seeing no other questions and comments, the motion before the board is that the committee approves R 277-927 Teacher and Student Success Act TSSA Program Draft 2 on first reading and forwards to the board for approval on second and final reading. Go ahead and please vote. Has Board Member Bogus left?
I show 4 yeses. I just don't have yours, Chair.
Oh, okay. I am a yes, so that is unanimous. Thank you.
And thank you, Chair. I'm going to head out to law and licensing now, but I think Deputy Superintendent Jones will tee up the next policy.
All right, so we're on to action item, on to agenda item 1.4, which is an action item, R277 dash, nope, sorry, we just did that. Excuse me. Okay, now we're on agenda item 1.5, which is an action item, board policy 2001, regarding board member compensation. This is an amendment, and Deputy Superintendent Jones will walk us through this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The proposal is to amend the bylaws to allow for an increase in compensation to board members who are required to attend particular meetings. So if you could scroll down to the changes are delineated by underlines. So yeah, right, stop there, sorry. So line 28, or I'm sorry, line 30. This would be a legislative meeting day when a board member is required to attend or present on behalf of the board. And then if you go to line 37, board member may receive compensation for up to 6 additional meeting days for time work related to board agenda items, board member district meetings, or meetings related to the objective of the board's strategic plan. So essentially, or right now, there's a certain amount of meetings that have been approved by the chair, by the board, for board members to attend. You're all board members, present and future, all paid on a set rate. So if the meeting is 1 hour, or the meeting is 9 hours or 10 hours, you all receive the same level of compensation for that particular meeting day or that particular meeting. Subject to any questions or concerns, I'm not sure if maybe Assistant Superintendent Jacobson has joined us yet. She can speak to the amounts for the board members if there's a value add there. Has she joined us yet, Cammie?
I am here.
Okay, yeah. Could you, Madam Chair, at your direction, could Deborah speak to the compensation amounts and add anything I might have missed?
Yes, I would appreciate that. Go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am.
So Assistant Superintendent of Operations, Deborah Jacobson. And I just barely got on, so I missed your presentation, Scott. I don't know.
Madam Chair, just to orient Assistant Superintendent Jacobson, all I did was review the underlying changes with them, saying that, the bylaws amendment is proposing these, so if you look at line 30, the legislative meeting day when a board member is required to attend or present on behalf of the board. And then I oriented them to lines 37 through 41. Up to 6 additional meeting days for the work related to, and basically just need you to confirm that regardless of how long any of these meetings are on a particular day, they're paid a set rate on that particular day for that attendance to that, or for their required attendance to that meeting. Did I get that right? And can you add anything else?
That is correct. And currently the rate is $285 per day. It is going up in January to $293.55 with benefits on average, and this is an average because everybody's benefit package is different. On average, it costs about $500 per meeting for board members. So that's just would be a quick and easy way to see how much it would cost for multiple meetings.
Madam Chair, if I may, I've erroneously been referring to board bylaws. This is board policy. Sorry, that's my mistake. Board policy.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Davis.
Thank you. I sent amendment language. I don't know. I sent it to Deputy Jones and Cammie Wilcox, so I wasn't sure who's driving now that Ben left.
So Cammie, do you have that from Cindy? Or I'm sorry, from Board Member Davis, sorry.
Okay, and so I would move to amend, well, we don't have a motion on the floor. Do we need to put a motion on the floor before I move to make an amendment, Chair Norton?
Well, let's go through and see if there's any questions to the original. And
Okay.
then when we're ready, we'll bring forth the motion and then you can amend.
Okay.
Board Member Bogus.
Thank you. I'm so sorry, Coach. I know I've had a conversation pretty extensive with Vice Chair Davis, and I appreciated our times. I'm going to have to take off here shortly, but I just want to caution us as we debate this that when we vote for raises for ourselves, we need to do so with extreme thoughtfulness and caution and consideration of the taxpayer and for the public, sometimes serving on the board is like two full-time jobs. And so I know that we all can acknowledge that as board members, but as you guys engage in this conversation, my input as I have to exit the conversation is just that that we approach this with caution and discernment and consideration of the taxpayer as we look at this. I'm my understanding is that Member Davis's amendments are going to include some language with some time frame parameters and such. And so I thank her for the conversations that we've had, and I look forward to looking at this in full board. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other questions, let's get the original motion up, please, Cami.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, while Cammie's doing that, so and I understand for board member Bogus's concerns. We just want to be clear that the rate that Deborah described is not an increase based on the board,
Right.
but just that the meetings are, and the policy is being amended for the meetings. I think she knows that. I think it's me, but just for the for the public, that rate change is not being requested here. It's just being requested that when the new rate goes into effect or whatever, additional meetings would mean that that's what the rate would be to pay for those, all and these additional meetings. I hope that makes sense for.
It does. And Deputy Superintendent, would you just, also continue on with that clarification and let maybe the public know where that rate came from and where that rate adjustment came from?
Yes, at your direction, can I phone my friend, Assistant
Yes.
Jacobson, to describe that? Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks.
So in statute, board rates are actually, they follow what the legislature is paid. So if the legislature's rate changes, board members' rates changes. And it typically, so and it's an every other year thing that happens during the session. It's reviewed every year. It doesn't mean that it's increased every year, but it does get reviewed every other year, and then it will follow the next January after that session is when rates are. So in 2024, the rate has been reviewed and increased, and so it will take effect this January. Does that answer the question?
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yes. All right. So the motion, the recommended action is up if we have someone that would like to make that motion. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. I'll jump in and do that. The motion before the committee is that the committee approves board policy 2001, board member compensation, draft 1, and forward the recommend to the board. Forward the recommendation to the board. Okay, now the motion's on the table. Vice Chair Davis.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted noted, I didn't initiate this rule. I didn't think it necessarily was needed, though I certainly understand those who did and understand the amount of work that goes in to these board positions and such. But if folks are going to pass this rule, I think the concern for me, especially, and as I talked with our financial department, was the unlimited number of legislative meetings in the rule. So I would like to make the following amendment. I did that in reverse, Chair. I'm sorry. I should have said the motion first and then spoken. I move to strike lines 30 and 31 and replace with the following. A legislative meeting where member chooses to attend up to 2 annually and or attends or presents on behalf of the board as assigned by the chair up to 5 annually. And I'd be happy to answer questions if others have questions about that, but I think I've already spoken to the rule. You can't have this open-ended, when you're working with a finite budget, you can't have infinite, theoretically, or many, many, many opportunities to go to meetings and be compensated. Thank you.
Committee Member Straight.
Yes, do I need to turn this off? Let's see here. Okay, that should be better. So I'm in favor of, the adjustment for the amount per day. It's based on protocol that's already in place. It's not the board that's putting that in. I know that in my time in local government, we tied it to an index so that each year automatically adjusted based on the index instead of us voting in our own raise. So it just automatically did that. And that made a big difference. This is set up the same way, and I think that's good. So I'm very much in favor of that. Uh, you know, in my time, one of the things that's been frustrating is the lack of time that's available to actually take positions and to discuss legislation and to come up with a plan of how legislation can be improved in a very proactive and positive way. And so, my suggestion is that those Thursday meetings, that's the wrong day to have that meeting because uh, that's when all the education stuff is up. I think there needs to be some additional meeting time where the time is taken to do the work of legislation and to put our expertise in educating children uh, to work and in a proactive and positive way. So these random five days, I think we just need to spend more time and add a couple days to official meetings of the board because the board comes to a consensus after discussion and after coming to understand the issues and the concerns of the public as put forth by the legislature, as well as our input as well. So I'm for adding some days, but I think we need more time spent dedicated towards the actual work of the board for the education of children, which the purse strings of education are up on top of the hill, and we need to make ourselves a positive. We need to have a positive impact on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to make an amendment at this time or maybe before board meeting or what would you like to do with that thought, Board Member Straight?
Okay, let's see here. Sorry, I have to toggle between
I get it.
the volumes. Well, I think the best day to meet would be a Monday or a Tuesday. I may be wrong on that, but I think that we need to add 2 days where full days of work where the board can come up with their policies and their efforts. I just don't like the nebulous 5 days of your choosing and things like that. So anyway, that's what I would like to see happen.
Did you want to put something, what I was asking is, did you want to put something formally together here or potentially at a later date, or how, or we're just expressing your thoughts on this idea? You're muted. Brent, you're muted.
I wonder if he turned his, in order to get rid of that echo, if he can't hear us. Jim, are you in the same room with Brent?
Yeah, Chair Moss and or Board Member Straight, we cannot hear you.
You're both muted.
Yeah.
I have an ongoing chat with them. I just texted them.
Thanks, ma'am. Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Hey, through you, Director Felt, can you see if somebody from IT can go in and I think they're in that board conference room or something. Can you see if maybe they'll probably figure it out before the IT person gets there, but if you can.
Yes, yeah, I'll get somebody.
Dispatch somebody in there and make sure they know we can't hear. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
They're on their way to go find them and help.
Through the chair, thanks, Director Felt. I just,
Don't want to speak for Board Member Straight.
right.
Hello?
Yes,
Oh, there he
thank
is.
you.
Yep.
Board Member Straight, I was just, we couldn't hear you after you made your initial comment. And I was just asking if you wanted to make an amendment, or if you want some time to draft an amendment to present during when we, if this passes, when we bring it to the board in December, how you wanted to proceed with your thoughts on this.
So I would actually like to move it forward as is.
Okay.
I think to be fair though to Board Member Davis, she has some concrete amendments. I have a very broad concept and I don't know if we were, but we've been discussing some things and we've been discussing several things that in regards to this issue. And I think there does need to be some changes, but I don't want to irrationally throw out some changes that, sink the ship. So anyway,
I appreciate
now let's
that.
move forward.
All right. So, Vice Chair Davis, did you have another comment?
Yes, I just want to make it very clear that sinking a ship comes when you have open-ended opportunity to bill for meetings. And the only thing I'm changing from the folks who proposed this rule is to cap so there's not an open-ended opportunity for meetings. Without an amendment, there's no way I will vote for this rule because a family doesn't run a budget like that. I'm going to spend whatever I want regardless of what my budget is. That's not okay. So I don't care when we get to full board, if we change this amendment, but the only way I'd feel comfortable with it going out of committee at all, and I still don't know if I'll vote for it, but is that it has some type of cap on it, which can be changed in full board. And if we want to change the 2 to just 5 for everybody or whatever, or more formalize it, so we extend our meetings on Thursdays while we're already up there and have more time to talk and move it to Monday or whatever. Any of that is subject for discussion. But for today, I think we need to focus on the fact that currently there's an open-ended piece of this proposed policy, and it needs to be not open-ended. That is the whole purpose of this motion. I'm fine if it gets adjusted later, but I think we need to send a message that it needs to be containable.
Thank you, Chair Moss.
There we go. I'll just briefly say I agree. Member Davis has been in board leadership. I've been in this last 2 years. You end up with a whole ton of meetings and you wish you could get paid for all of them. But the truth is, I think as Member Davis has suggested, that's an open-ended use of our budget. We do need a cap. It might be subject to more debate at the full board level, but yeah, we do need controls. I could have made some pretty good money the last couple of years if I was able to charge for every time I had a Zoom call with the legislator on this or that item. So I think some controls are good for budgetary restraint and oversight. And again, maybe those get adjusted, but I think concept is a very good one.
Well, and also the concept of public service. And, that's really the reason people should be running for office is public service, not for additional pay for meetings. Okay, so the amendment that we have before us is that we strike lines 30 and 31 and replace with the following: a legislative meeting where a member chooses to attend up to 2 annually and/or attends, presents on behalf of the board as assigned by the chair up to 5 annually. Board Member Vargas?
I have no comment on this. I will go after this, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing no other questions or comments, committee members, if you'll go ahead and please vote on this amendment. Okay, that looks like that passes unanimously. All right, back to you, Committee Member Vargas.
Yes. So I'm so sorry. So as I originally reviewed this, and I guess I'm speaking to the committee at large here, it really presented a huge financial incentive to run for leadership. And I don't know what the solution is in this moment, but I still think that that needs to be addressed. I don't know if there are upcoming amendments to that end, but one should not seek a leadership position because there's financial incentive. They should seek a leadership position to serve the body and the community at large. And at its core, leadership is a verb, is a movement to help those around us rise. It's not to enrich ourselves, especially in this realm. And I know that in American politics, that's kind of been turned on its head. But I think we really need to consider that as we debate this and move this forward through that realm, that even financially, that playing field should be leveled, if you will, and evenly distributed among all board members. So those would be my comments, and maybe we deal with that in the full board because of my personal time constraints today. But I want to throw that out there for consideration.
That's a really important topic and a really thoughtful comment as we consider our positions and the cause of leadership, et cetera. So thank you for that. All right, seeing no other questions or comments, the motion before the committee is that the committee approves board policy 2001, board member compensation, draft 1 as amended, and forward the recommendation to the board. Go ahead and please vote.
So, Chair, I heard you, but it does not appear as if Member Straight and Member Moss have heard you. I don't know, maybe not.
I wonder.
I can hear.
Okay. And are you there still with Chair Moss?
Yes.
I'm here.
Okay, so you guys are there? All right, so we can vote?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and please vote.
I'll vote to move it for discussion with the full board.
That is unanimous. Okay, and my sincere apologies to our committee and to our
Chair.
viewing audience. We have been on again, off again, on again, all over the place with this, but we will go back now and open agenda item 1.2, which is an action item R277-801. And Deputy Superintendent Jones, I think that is your cue.
Yes, ma'am. So, with this particular agenda item, you heard from, well, the committee and the public heard from, Ben Rasmussen, on it. So then, as you stated, it got moved and now we're bringing it back, at the request of a board member, a member of the finance committee for particular, motions related to it. So at this time, if I may turn it back to you, Madam Chair, we can put those motions up as part of, the action related to 801.
Thank you. Vice Chair Davis.
Thank you. I move that pending additional work and development of Rule R277-801, that the board provide $300,000 to Tooele School District to allow for identified necessary services to their students by USDB, and that the board can coordinate with the legislature to ensure proper alignment of the funds for this purpose. Number 2, that the board direct staff to work with board members and the legislature to request temporary funding for FTE needs for next year as we work toward a new formula long-term solution that aligns practice with current or potential code and meets the needs of those working at, and I suppose I would add learning at, USDB, the LEAs in the bottom 3 enrollment percentile, and the large LEAs. And I'd like to speak to the motion.
Go ahead.
I've spent many hours thinking through this and talking with folks and taking phone calls and whatnot from USDB and otherwise. And I was ready to go full board to figure out a new formula, get it done today. But I have listened to the wisdom of others who have said, we need to get all the stakeholders in the room. We need to think through what's going to happen long term. So that addresses part 2 of this. Part number 1 is concerning because legally, because of the way our board rule says pending funding, but the legal fee structure says that we need to meet the needs in the bottom 3%. So for us to be in compliance, we need to meet the needs of all of those in the bottom 3%, which includes Tooele School District. And we can't go back and say to them, you have to pay for half of this because we don't have enough money. That's not really an option for us to be in compliance the way I understand it from our finance team. So I feel like this will bring us into compliance. I do have one question, Chair Norton, if it's okay with you, for our finance team. And do we need to include in number 1 where the funds will come from, for example, from the carry forward balances, or do we leave that open-ended?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
staff recommends that we don't identify specifically where the funds will come from. That we have the direction to provide the $300,000, but we will identify the source to the full board should this motion go from the finance committee to the board in December, as part of the board's consideration of this motion. Does that answer Board Member Davis's question?
Yes, and then Chair, I'll just finish to the other piece, the FTE piece, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
On the FTE piece, if you want to learn about USDB funding, spend like an hour with Deborah Jacobson, because my mind got blown yesterday. But we and I don't even think I ever realized this in the 6 years I've been on the board, get a whole new allocation every year, and we're not based on enrollment and growth. It's really a whole different ballgame. And we haven't been funded for these FTE the last few years since COVID. USDB's used ESSER funds and then carry forward funds to pull all that carry forward down. And now we're at a place where we really need to figure out a long-term solution. But for 1 year, we're going to be in a mess this coming year if we don't work on a temporary solution for 1 year while we get to what right is, to use Deputy Superintendent Jones's words, long term. So that's where that middle piece comes from. And, I'm not emotionally tied to this. I'm happy to adjust with what people feel is right. But this is where I think is going to get us at least started on the path of the appropriate conversations.
Chair Moss.
Thank you. Question for our finance team then. Knowing that there are possible recommendations or tweaks to legislation on the less than 3%, what's the intersection? I respect Vice Chair Davis's position that we want to make sure we're within code. How does this fit in with the recommendations from USDB on changing code?
Madam Chair? Yeah, to Chair Moss's question, I and staff believe that by way of Member Davis's motion, and specific to number 2, that allowing staff to, you know, with board members and the legislature to request the temporary funding will actually, help with what your question is, Chair Moss. It will help us to ensure that by way of this process, we are in tune with the legislature for any of those potential changes. And based on that question, and if Board Member Davis is amenable to this, Madam Chair, I would recommend that the large LEAs be specified as LEAs with 3% or more of the population, so that we can specifically hone in on that, so that it does allow for that interface with the legislature and to address Chair Moss's question. Does that help address Chair Moss's question? And then also my recommendation for more specificity in the motion for the 3%. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That helps. Thank you. I was waiting for that. Yes, I appreciate just as a little throwback, the additional specificity.
And
a tribute to my predecessor. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, if I may, and through you, and if Board Member Davis is also amenable to this, the line or the part in the number 1 where it says by used to be, and that the board coordinate. If Board Member Davis's motion in that particular part of the motion implies that the board coordinate means board staff or USBE staff, that's fine. But typically in motions like this, we do delineate clearly that you're giving us permission to, USBE staff. So I just want to make sure that, that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, Madam Chair, I'm sorry, I'm being really picky here, but could we say with 3% or more of the public student population? Or of the public student population? Yes.
Yes, that is my intent.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Madam Chair, I believe you're muted if you're speaking, ma'am.
I'm so sorry, I was.
No problem. No problem. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Pending additional work and development of Rule R277801, that the board provide $300,000 to Tooele School District to allow for identified necessary services to their students by USDB, and that board staff coordinate with the legislature to ensure proper alignment of the funds for this purpose. That the board directs staff to work with board members and the legislature to request temporary funding for FTE needs for next year as we work toward a new formula long-term solution that aligns practice with current or potential code and meets the need of those working and learning at USDB. The LEAs in the bottom 3 enrollment percentile and the large LEAs with 3% or more of the public student population. Okay, seeing no hands, committee members, go ahead and please vote. Oh, I thought I saw Board Member Bogus on.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I was switching devices. I would like to abstain. I apologize.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. All right, so
Madam
that,
Chair?
yes, sir.
Yeah, so the implied piece to this is great. So as we move this to the main board, I just want to be clear that we will identify the funding source. And that the implication of the wording 300,000 to Tooele School District could actually mean that the $300,000 goes to USDB to cover the Tooele School District, but we'll identify the source of that. But I just wanted to publicly define that the $300,000 may not actually go directly to Tooele School District. It'll be provided to
On
Tooele School
behalf of,
District as part of the services, or, that part. We're just, I just want to make sure that that implication is clear. And we can make that more clear when we get to, now that you've moved this out of committee. When we identify the $300,000, we'll make sure to clarify too, that whatever you decide as the board, where their source will come from, that it won't be transferred directly to Tooele, but it will benefit or, provide that funding to make sure that those kids, students in Tooele get served. So,
okay,
yeah, more to follow on that, but thank you, committee. Staff are on it, and we're moving. Thank you.
okay. Just to clarify that did not change anybody's vote. Will you repost your votes? Okay, so that passes 4-1 with Board Member Bogus abstaining. Okay, is there anything else we need to do with 801?
No, ma'am. Subject to any further direction from you or committee member questions or concerns, that concludes this agenda item at this time.
Thank you. All right, we are on agenda item 1.6, which is an information item recognizing progress, achievement, or improvements. Deputy Superintendent Jones.
Madam Chair, we have no recognition beyond just the presentation for all of the great progress we're making with USIMS. So if at your direction, if you'll call on Katrina for delivery of the deeper dive, if you will, on it, we can proceed at your direction.
Yes, but before we move on to that, I would like to make just to let everyone on this particular stream know that yesterday, in case you were not in attendance or were not participating in the full, I don't know how long that meeting was yesterday, 10 or 11 hours, we also had recognition for this operations team, and well, Director Bruff and Superintendent Jones stood up and were recognized, rightly so. I'm sure that they would be more than happy to say that this is the operations team that was recognized by the state superintendent, Sid Dixon, for the wonderful work that they did on a federal audit, and that she just mentioned how happy she was to get that letter that, congratulated them on that great work. And so we think that additionally, we should let everyone in the finance committee hear about that wonderful recognition. So thank you all. I know that represents not hundreds, but thousands of hours when you put everyone's time together. And we know that we can always trust the work that is done by this group because it is the gold standard. So thank you so much. With that being said, we will now move on to Katrina. Thanks, Katrina.
Thank you, Chair. I see that Chair Moss had his hand up before
Oh.
we jump in. Is it
Okay.
okay if we?
Yes, go ahead, Chair Moss.
Just on the topic of thanks, if I could really quickly, I was just reviewing the oversight framework chart as we were working through a couple of our action items. And I just wanted to say thanks to our staff for putting these together. It's relatively new, came out of some changes last year, but as you look through these and you see what the legislation requires, what it allocates in staffing, how we've been doing this, it really frames it up well to kind of tell us where we stand in relation to our oversight on these programs. And it also frames it up if anybody feels like that needs to be adjusted up or down, whether that's within board, discretion or something that would have to be a legislative recommendation. These charts are very helpful. There was some confusion about where it came from, what it meant, but I think seeing it in practice, it's a really good map to the world as it is and allows us to, weigh in if we think that ought to be changed. So just kind of thanks. It's become a normal part of this, but I really appreciate that visibility on where we currently stand and where we might want to weigh in if we choose to do so. So thank you, Chair.
You and Chair, if I may, we'll proceed with the USIMS presentation.
Great, go ahead.
Thank you. All right. Good morning, Finance Committee. As usual, we are ready to give you some updates. Some fun stuff has been going on in USIMS since our last month. So I will go ahead and get that started. Can everyone see my screen okay? Yes? No?
I'm not seeing anybody shaking their head no, so I think we're okay.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. All right. We'll go ahead and just jump right in. As a reminder, USIMS is divided into 3 major domains. Our domains are the educator, finance, and student domain, and each of these domains represents a distinct population or group of people who will be interacting with USIMS. And this allows us to represent those people within the system well and allows us to ensure that the system that we're developing meets their needs specifically. As always, our roadmap is available online at any time via this link. We include a snippet of what it currently looks like, just so that the board has verification that things are moving along and changing over time. And that roadmap is, like I said, always available and up to date. So if you ever have questions on what we'll be working on or are working on, it is there and available. For our financials, this last month, we moved from using ESSER and ARP funds, as those were time limited, to go away on September 30th. So we have moved over to using the state provided funds or legislatively provided funds. We are currently using the 17 USIMs and we'll switch to the 20 USIMs here shortly as those 17 USIMS funds run out, and we'll be giving more in-depth details of those specific funds as we use them. This slide gives you an overview of the line items that have occurred in the last month and what we're looking at over time. And and then this is our final dive into the ARP funds. This slide will be changing next month as we're no longer using ARP funds and we'll be moving over to the 17 and 20 USIMs, and you'll receive slides for those specifically coming next month. Before I jump over to our student domain, do I have any questions on the financials?
I'm not seeing anything.
All right, then Chair, if I may turn the time over to Mark Waddups. Oh,
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, if I may, this is Scott.
You bet.
Katrina, could you go back one slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that we've moved past the ESSER money, use of the ESSER funds, and we are starting to use the 17.2 million of the state funds. And as Katrina progresses through this, it's those state funds that will allow for us to meet the legislative requirements for July 1st of 2025, July 1st of 2026. But for the record, we have started to use the $17,200,000 of state funds. Is that correct, Katrina? Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Right, and if I may, I turn the time over to Mark Waddups, our student domain product owner.
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, there. Sorry, I was double muted. Good morning, board members. This slide here, I'm Mark Waddups, the product owner for the student domain in USIMS. This is a slide that some of you may remember that we have a kind of a before USIMS, after, and what those benefits are. This is intended to be a summary slide that shows by each of our different user groups what the value is that they're getting from the work that we've done. So here you can see these are some of the challenges that students have had here on the left, and what we're being able to, or what we're doing with the work that we're doing in USIMS this past year and continuing to progress on, which we'll talk about here in a moment. Next slide. Yeah, and here, this is just, again, educators and counselors, what benefits they get from before and after USIMS, as well as what the school and LEA administrations get. So really trying to categorize those in groups so that you can see exactly what benefits that you're getting from what we're doing.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Deputy
So
Superintendent.
for further clarity on all the great efforts and work that are being done with USIMS as a whole, but then in the student arena, I'd just like to the committee members and the public to recall my statement yesterday to the board that we are in the process of setting up meetings with SIS vendors and districts users of those systems. The so what of that is that, as you can see, so going forward, we're going to, USIMS stands for Utah Schools Information Management System. We're going to change the S from the last S that says system to Utah Schools Information Management Structure. The USIMS is not necessarily a system in itself, right? It's an infrastructure that provides what you're seeing, which was the direction of the legislature as part of the, for lack of a better term, compromise on one SIS years ago. What we will be talking to the vendors about, with the related to this ongoing development of the one SIS concept and things like that, is in the after, with the structure that USIMS does. It says, for example, ability to better diagnose a new student's individual needs based on academic history. Well, that ability is contingent upon that the data that is entered into the SIS or the systems at the local level is accurate. USIMS does not or will not necessarily ensure increased reliability or data accuracy. It will reduce quite significantly, the burden of all the effort and time it takes to move records back and forth, but it is not a solution to the ongoing issue of, as determined by audits, not by Scott, by audits, that there's not enough reliability and accuracy in data, not only as it relates to academic history, but graduation data, those types of things. So I just really felt that it would benefit the committee, based on what we're talking about, that you see the parallel processes that are going on, and that staff are honoring the motions of the board and the direction of the board to meet with the SIS vendors and to ensure that there's clarity on what USIMS is and what it's not, and what we still would likely need at the entry point of data to ensure that what is being moved across the infrastructure is accurate, reliable, etc. Based on our follow-ups on our required follow-ups on the audits by both OLAG and internal audit regarding data reliability and accuracy. So, Madam Chair, thank you for allowing me to say this. Subject to any questions or concerns with anything I have said here, at your direction, I turn it back to Mark and here's a briefing. Thank you, Matt.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank
Mark?
you. Mhm. So here, we're looking at just this is the slide that you typically see from us that just shows the current and upcoming work. So we've been able to work through some technical challenges with getting enrollment data from the SIF zones. And really what we're focused on is providing, as you'll recall, real student data. So as Deputy Superintendent Scott Jones just mentioned, we've been in dialogue with those SISs, letting them know where we're going. And now we're at a point where we're having those deeper conversations of, hey, we've got this data available. Now it's time to work out specific timelines with each of those vendors. And there is complexity or variability in each of those SIS vendors and when they can actually start testing and implementing in their SIS systems. So our focus has been on making sure that we have live data and that we can work out those timelines with them to test through that. Those are the main highlights from this. Any questions on what I've discussed?
That is great information. I don't see any questions at this point.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This here is just a reminder of what we were just talking about. These are the data sets that we're looking to provide as part of the student backpack. We continue to make progress on this, where in statewide assessment results, we had a little breakthrough that should help us accelerate providing not just RISE scores, but the other assessment scores. And we have another team that's working currently on attendance. So kind of both teams are kind of working in parallel to speed up our delivery. Next slide, please. And this just, again, highlights what we're looking to do to expand on the student backpack, which includes adding the WEDIS screener scores, which has been something our stakeholders have been asking for quite a bit. You may recall that we are collecting this information now at the state level for reporting purposes and looking to provide that as part of the student backpack to help students and administrators to be able to simply be able to place those students easier, to be able to identify if a student has English language learner needs and that they can match those programs up as soon as that child is coming into their LEA. And then SCRAM and IEP, that's also within the scope of our roadmap this year. I know there's been a lot of anticipation around those individual education plans and being able to facilitate moving them from one LEA to another. And we're looking at that as well this year. This just summarizes what we're trying to do with that data. So showing kind of the interaction of the functionality that enables that movement of the data. We're focused. E-transcripts is something that's more of a stretch goal, but we want to make sure that we can get the real student data so that we can actually start, we've provided our part and we can work with those SIS vendors to implement as quickly as possible and realize that value. I think that's it. With your permission, Chair, I'll turn the time back to Katrina.
Of course, thank you. Go ahead, Katrina.
Thank you. And if I may just turn the time right over to Dawn Moody, our product owner chair.
Welcome, Don. Go ahead.
Thank you, Katrina, and thank you, members of the board. I'm Don Moody, product owner with the USIMS finance domain. With the before and after on the USIMS side, without USIMS, the LEAs, it's a manual process for them to submit budget and actual information to USB, which then USB needs to provide to the Department of Education and federal entities. The process works, but it is a manual and it's a cumbersome process, and it's a trial and error process. There's a lot of back and forth. Sometimes that's a lot of coordination with between USB and the LEAs to kind of get those completed. With USIMS, USIMS is a more proactive system in that, okay, hey, the accounts available to the LEAs are more easily seen and more easily available, so that, hey, that, rather than having to do trial and error, the LEAs, can be more proactive about ensuring that their accounts match up accordingly. And really another, key component of USIMS is that, we're using technology that is very new to many SCAs. And USIMS is helping to drive improvements across the United States with kind of adopting API functionality and helping modernize how both student and financial information is shared between LEAs and state entities. Next slide, please. So quickly on this is just a couple screenshots for the, as part of enabling those financial submissions. We've put this information online in USIMS in production, with the individual accounts and the revenue, expenditure, and balance sheet combinations that are used for financial submissions. We've actually recently shared with the USB finance team, how they can quickly make updates and add additional individual accounts. And we're also working in the short term on doing that same functionality for the combinations. Those changes will the changes that are made here in USIMS will go to the finance API instantaneously, so that we'll enable and be able to provide more in-depth information and better information as far as the revenue and expenditures being captured by the LEAs. Next slide, please. So as far as kind of the recent wins, we've got some, like I said, we've shared functionality with being able to manage those individual components with USB. Just walked through that a few weeks ago with them. We've also got some great feedback from both the a couple of LEAs during our on-site visit, as well as some of the vendor coordination that we've been doing. We've actually recently worked through with a couple of different vendors to confirm that they're able to have the information that they need. One of them had some questions about the program relationship to revenue expenditures that we were able to clarify with them. And then on another team, we were able to confirm that they had everything that they needed in order to start in development on their end. We're also in the process of adding additional technical documentation via our Swagger page, again, just to make sure that we can proactively answer any questions that the vendors connecting to USIMS may have. And again, as far as the right now, on that first bullet point on the program component, we've actually been able to kind of recently complete that, and we demoed that during our focus working group a couple days ago, showing that functionality kind of works as expected. And then we're also, a big component of what the team will be working on over the next few months is in the indirect cost space, and that's a critical component on the finance side to have that available. So we've got a lot of the design ideas in place. We've done a lot of great coordination, both with the focus working group and the team at USB Finance to handle that. And so now we're getting into the weeds on those calculations, which are, they're very important and not simple calculations that the team is doing. And then, just as far as the not really an issue or risk, but again, just kind of that continued coordination and continued dialogue with the vendors as they are connecting to USIMS. We're kind of constantly providing them, not constantly, but every month or every few weeks, we're trying to proactively let them know, okay, here's where we're at. And we have communicated with them that, we're at a point now, we're not making a lot of changes at this point. Well, obviously, if there's any feedback that the vendors need, USIMS will address that. But, again, we're trying to, we've reached a good point as far as the stability of the platform, that we're not anticipating any major changes at this point. So Madam Vice Chair, turn back to you, I guess. Oh, and I'm sorry, was there a?
Yes.
All right, so I see if Madam Vice Chair, if I see that someone has a question, if you'd like, I can address that.
Yes, if you would, please.
Okay.
I guess you're referring to me. I'm just wondering, I appreciate that you said that you're working with vendors as they connect to meet their needs. I would love to hear back in this committee if they are working to meet our needs. Because there's, been discussions here and there about, how others, outside vendors will connect with us, and that we may need to make a change at some point, to single systems and whatnot. But I'll be curious as to how they are interacting with us. I know we're trying to work hard with them too, but I'll be curious as to how they're interacting with us. After those, I know some meetings are gonna be happening in the future.
Right. Madam Vice Chair, I mean, would you like me to address that or either now or like in a future discussion or?
Now, if you can, and
Sure.
If not, we could bring it later, but yeah, any questions you can answer now, that's awesome. Thanks.
Sure. So Member Davis, as far as the coordination with the vendors, I think it's been pretty good overall. It is the reason why USIMS is obviously the platform that we're using is we're close to we're very similar to the Ed5 standards, which a couple of the larger vendors they have connected with one or two other states kind of using those standards. So we're not, what USIMS is doing isn't it isn't completely new for some of it, but there are some very important uniqueness because Utah and USB has unique requirements that are not recognized or that are not done in other states. That's why our implementation is a little bit different than what they might have seen on the Ed5 side. But in general, the vendors have been good about connecting and being responsive as far as letting us know what's going on and asking us any questions. So with our time frame on this year, we're working to connect the pilot LEAs. Each vendor has identified one LEA that they'll be, obviously they're using the existing platform for the CSV submissions, but they're also, and obviously the submissions for the pilot kind of happen after the fact. But we're doing that to kind of make sure all those connections are in place and addressing any issues that potentially come up. Did
Don,
that,
if I may interject,
Sure.
a caveat to this is that our finance vendors, while some of them overlap with our SIS vendors, they are distinctly different systems in many cases. So the coordination that we're doing on the finance end, yes, there's some similar vendors, but there are also brand new vendors with the same coordination happening on the student domains with different vendors and some overlapping of vendors.
Chair, may I follow up?
Yes, please.
Thank you. That's why my hand was up, just to say, historically, that's good to know that relationship has existed financially and what the crossover is with our vendors, with student information and with finance. And I appreciate it. This is a very intricate web of a lot of things. And as we move forward into more of those discrete vendors that work more in the SIS system, it will be good to hear what the experience is like there as well as we move forward.
Yes, ma'am, of course.
Hey, go ahead, Don.
Thank you, Chair Norton. As far as the on the definition of done, the team has outlined a couple different areas that we're working through. Through up until July 1st. As far as I talked about with the finance API. We're at a stable point with that, and just kind of working with a big component here at this point. Working with the different vendors to make sure that that they have what they need, and doing a lot of coordination with them. On the carry forward calculations with indirect costs, there's a lot of work that the team has done on that, and also that will be a big focus for us over the next several months. We've had good conversations with different stakeholders about that, as I mentioned earlier. And then on the managing the accounts and combinations, we've just the how it's done is in place. We just have on the UI side just kind of implement a couple of those designs. So again, we're pretty far along with that, and looking forward to sharing that with our focus working group here in the upcoming months. So, Chair Norton, unless there's any questions, I just turn it back to you, please.
Thank you so much for that great information. I'm not seeing any additional questions, so we'll turn it back to Katrina.
Thank you, Chair. And if I may, we'll play the merry-go-round and send it over to Tim Davis, our product owner from the educator domain.
Okay, welcome. You said it was Tim, is that correct? Tim Davis?
Thank you, Chair Norton.
Yeah.
Good morning, board members. Tim Davis, product owner for the educator domain in USIMS. The slide you see before currently is our educator experience, LEA experience before USIMS. So I'll kind of break down the slides. I know it's kind of busy, but this kind of encompasses where the user experience was before USIMS came up and running. So on our left-hand corner, top left-hand corner is, for those of you who remember, our third-party provider of Utah Interactive, who provided educator services, and it was 7 individual one-time transactions. You'd have to go in and do things one at a time. You couldn't go in all at once, do everything. The image down below under that is our educator lookup tool, where the public has the ability to go look up our educators. Our middle screen is from our Utah Education Network, and the data that you see is from test users. I've just blocked it out just to not incriminate any fake data that you're seeing. And then the slide to the right, or the image on the right, is our current Cactus system with a test user as well. So you see the educator record from the Cactus administration or page. And so next slide, please. And then, so currently with USIMS, what we've done is what you're seeing here is the images in your left-hand corner are what. So in USIMS, everything's we are behind permissions. So it's not like, so when you log in, you'll see what we call their cards. And so you see 5 different cards. So depending on what type of user you are, so the top card is like, if you're an educator, you're going to go in, you're only able to see this card. But to make it more like staff specific, if I'm a TNL user, they can go in and they can see the university recommendations that have been done that's currently in production, but they can also go in and see the background check information. But then with our UPAC users, and this is specifically for like Brandy Schultz, who's the secretary for Director Rasmussen, she can go in and see the criminal background review results from CBR BCI, but then she can go in and see where we've created our UPAC case creation page, and then the rest of the UPAC staff would only see the UPAC card. So those are the images you see, and then the image below those cards is from our Power BI reporting tool from our developer. So we're in reporting the USIMS data. This is an image of the data that we're reporting in regards to the educator's task checklist of items completed to teaching and learning, and we'll be expanding those functionality. And then the text on the right basically just kind of summarizes all of those images. I just kind of want to pause here and see if there's any questions from any of the board members.
I'm not seeing any questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Chair Norton. So this current slide is basically, so from our onsite, basically just I want to highlight kind of three things that for the group that we've been working on from when we met with stakeholders. So we met with Alpine School District, we met with the UPAC staff, and we met with internal teaching licensing staff. And so this slide is kind of some of the work that came from that onsite visit. So with our university recommendation or educator preparation program, which is in production, currently being used by 4 universities, we found some discrepancies that were happening in the production environment that didn't happen in the dev and test environment when we were testing. So we're addressing those discrepancies and getting a fix in place before the 4 universities complete their programs in the December timeframe, so that process will be smooth for those 4 universities, and then we can incorporate the rest of the universities going forward. But then in regards to teaching and learning, there are some with the complexities of running the criminal background review from BCI inside of Cactus and inside of USIMS. There's complexities with how that data syncs and how it updates from one record to the other that created some issues where we were creating a duplicate row because we were following the process flow. So we're addressing those. And then when we presented to the board last month, Vice Chair Hart kind of asked us, well, like where or how far along are we getting Cactus taken care of or getting off of Cactus? And so our focus is kind of like been just kind of with our definition of done is emphasizing. So we're running items in parallel with Cactus and USIMS. So we're just kind of focusing on how we can cut the cord from the things that are running in parallel to get them out of, basically turn it off in Cactus and just solely have it inside of USIMS. So that's kind of what this slide entails. Next slide, please. And this is our definition done. So we're currently like I've kind of mentioned, we've with our criminal background review CBR process, where we've automated, or we're in process of automating the wrapback renewal process. We're waiting on BCI to find bandwidth in their sprint development cycle so they can add it to their cycle, because there's a piece we need. So that's kind of on hold. But we've provided the information to our teaching and learning staff, and then we're working on the 2 other items where we'll be providing to the LEA users the tracked or not tracked, and also notifying the educator that their background review has been cleared. And then in assignments, what we're focused on we've had many conversations regarding assignments. We're looking at tackling it through the lens of, if USIMS develop an API, we could have the LEAs come to us and just give us their assignment data, and then we could, instead of populating inside of Cactus, instead of populating Cactus, it'd be done inside of USIMS. But there was a lot of challenges with that, so we've kind of refocused the conversation of going back to just tackling the bullet right here where it says providing a mechanism for LEAs to access the state assignment for the qualifications to manage their educator assignment. So what we're working on is we're working on providing to an LEA the ability to go in and view all of their educators for the current year and their assignments. And then part of that would also provide the ability to create the new school year, because that's one of the limitations of the legacy system. And then to also show what their educators are actually qualified to teach, to fill any gaps that they may have. Because if a teacher leaves who had a specialized skill set that they were teaching a very unique course, they could easily see if someone inside of their LEA has those qualifications that they could backfill that position to fill those gaps or to hire staff as needed. And then when we're done with these two things, we'll be transitioning to our UPAC Practices Advisory Commission of incorporating the UPAC hearing. So when we met with the UPAC staff, we got lots of feedback of how you, the board, when you guys have those closed door meetings of how that process is and things that we would need to do inside of USIMS to make that process from Cactus and put it inside of USIMS. And then our next slide, please. And then we'll be moving towards incorporating our third-party provider, the Utah Education Network inside of USIMS, continuing our rolling release of the educator prep program. So like I mentioned earlier, we have the 4 universities. Their programs will complete the programs for the educators in December. So we'll get those recommendations inside of USIMS. And if there's any enhancements or fixes we need to do, we'll be doing that. And then we'll be rolling the next release to include like Utah Valley and Weber. And then when the UEN and UPAC hearing stuff is done, we'll be transitioning to the school directory, LEA specific licenses. We're already doing the educator licensing, USIMS data reporting. That's that Power BI slide image that we showed. And during the week of the onsite, it happened over like what we call a sprint, which is a 2-week period of work. So in that 2 weeks while we did the onsite, we had a week worth of addressing tech debt. So we've started addressing this tech debt item here. Any questions from the board members?
I'm not seeing any.
All right, Chair Norton, if you don't mind, I'll turn the reins back to Katrina Brinkley.
Great, thank you. All right, Katrina.
Thank you, Chair. Just one final slide from USIMS today, just a reminder of our upcoming events. Our domains each do a focus working group once per sprint. So those are listed here for those who would like to join these focus working groups. And then we have a functional advisory board that occurs once a quarter. That is a deep dive with all of the domains on what they have accomplished in that quarter. It's a time for the developers to present the actual work that they've been doing. And then we will have an on-site in April for USIMS again, where we bring all of our developers on site and we go speak with LEAs. We had a great on-site this last month. We spoke with multiple LEAs across the state, including some youth in custody areas, an LEA that has some specific requirements, and Alpine and Granite and all sorts of fun stuff. So I do see that there is a hand up, Chair, if we may.
Yes, go ahead, Vice Chair Davis.
It's just all so exciting. That's all. I wanted to say it in every single presentation, but it wasn't a question, so I didn't necessarily feel like I could, but you know, it's happening and it's really exciting thanks to all of you and your hard work and your whole team. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. All right, and that would conclude our USIMS presentation if there are no other questions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. That's awesome. And boy, you are just marching through that list. Okay, we'll go back to Deputy Superintendent Jones for item 1.6.2.
Yeah, if we could pull the agenda back up, Cammy, so we're all oriented on 1.6.2. So in addition, to the deeper dive on the Utah Schools Information Management System, I just wanted before your direction, ma'am, we go to 6.2. Is this just checking in with you and members of the committee? We are still planning on providing a monthly detailed update on USIMS, you know, for future committee meetings. For item 6.2, we do provide the presentation, but we only are on a quarterly schedule for you know, presenting in more detail or having Rebecca present the item 6.2. So just orient the public and the committee members to the fact that there is a presentation on all the great things we're doing with the Utah grant system as well. But we won't be doing a deeper dive on that. So pending any questions or concerns, that concludes item number 6 in its entirety.
And I'm not seeing any concern on that, so we can then proceed to the request for data and information, item 1.7. And I know we have the one request that we heard earlier today as part of public comment and from that stems with a request for Board Member Bogus.
Yes, and so Cami, if you could pull that out, my understanding is we have that available. So just, you know, by way of process and conducive to item number 7, if we could show the committee what that particularly is. Board Member Bogus.
Are we sure? Did you want the video, sir, or did you want the?
No, the just click on the. I thought she sent it to you in writing, Cami.
Yes. So this is
Okay,
the one
yeah.
she sent just a minute
Not
ago.
the video, no, because we already had her here for that. So just for review by the committee members at your direction, Madam Chair, here is what Board Member Boggs requested in its entirety. So staff will look to gather this information and data and report back to the committee as part of this agenda item on her request in a future committee meeting. So yeah, just scroll down, Cami, just so everyone sees what the request is, or that she provided us to show you, and that staff will be working on gathering this information and data to satisfy or address your questions related to students. So subject to any questions and concerns about the data request or information request, Madam Chair, this concludes this agenda item.
Okay, that's great. And from what I see, that puts us at the end of our agenda. So checking back with both you and Cami on if there's anything else that we need to address.
I have nothing else, Madam Chair. Thank you.
And Cami, are we good with you?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, then I will take a final motion.
Oh, yes.
I think Brent wants to make that
I
one.
think Brent does too.
Oh, I better turn my picture back on for that. I didn't think you could hear me on that one. I moved that we adjourn.
Okay,
One.
not debatable. Members,
Just a comment,
vote.
Chair.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I've had a couple of people ask if I was trying to speak.
Brent and I are in the same room. We had some animated discussions.
Uh-oh,
about
we can't hear
all
you,
the
sir.
items that go into it. So I apologize that we can, the use of data, the reliability, how it relates to ROI, how it helps us, all these things. So yeah, I had a couple people reach out. Are you trying to talk? No, we were just really into our discussion about the things that you've been presenting. So thank you.
Okay.
I
Chair
vote to
Moss?
adjourn with that.
Okay, we will do that. We heard about a third of that
This stuff is
conversation, but
highly technical, but very frankly exciting for people trying to figure out how to move the needle on student success. So that's my explanation for all the excitement over here. Thank you all.
passion. That's great. Thank you. All right, everyone. 1 o'clock today. Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, that's in the back.